I just thought I would do a video to have a bit of a chat about what's been going on recently in my life, and I figured today was a really good day to do it because today is World MS Day. And for those of you who are not like really close friends and family, it's not widespread knowledge yet, of course it will be after this video, but I was diagnosed with MS or multiple sclerosis on the 20th of May, so not last Monday, the Monday before, so it's still quite new, and basically I just wanted to raise awareness for this because it's something that before I'd been diagnosed, I really didn't know much about it at all. I definitely thought that MS was really serious. I mean, it is quite a serious condition, but I definitely thought that people with MS were wheelchair bound, couldn't do anything. It was I had all these sort of common misconceptions about it. And didn't really know much about it, and I also definitely thought it was something that affected older people, so I didn't expect myself to ever be diagnosed with something like this at the age of 27. So but the reason why I'm doing this video is, as I say, because it's World MS Day today, so it's the perfect time to raise awareness. Also because whilst I was in the middle of being diagnosed, of course one of the first things I did was go online and have a look, and there were 3 people in particular who have done video blogs and written blogs and things that really helped me during that time. Their names are Rianne Gibson, who did a YouTube video that I watched, Izzy MS, I don't know her last name, but she's known as Izzy MS on YouTube, and she's amazing, and also a girl called Amy Thompson, who I found on Instagram, who's got a website called butyoudon'tlookill.com, and it's amazing, and she's done lots of blogs, and all 3 of them helped me so much. And I just kind of thought, like, if I could do a video and help just one person with my own experiences, then it would be so worth it. So that's why I kind of figured I'd just come on and chat about basically what's happened. It might be a bit of a long video, I apologise in advance. I do have my little cup of tea here, and I intend to just chat about what's happened. Obviously, you watch what you want to watch. I've no idea how long it's going to be, so who knows. Anyone who knows me knows that I can talk for England, so we might be here a while. But basically, so it all kick-started 3 months ago on the 20th of February. And that was when it all really kick-started, because basically I'd been, up until that point, I've been feeling relatively fine. Looking back now, I did have symptoms that I hadn't picked up on, but at the time I felt fine. I had been very stressed. I've been going through quite a stressy bit at work, but that all ties in with the other symptoms and stuff, which I'll go into. But basically, in general, I was fine, and I was at work and I was doing an inspection, and I was looking around the labs at work, like absolutely fine, and literally like that, as if someone had just flicked a switch, all of a sudden everything on my right hand side was double vision, and like it just came out of nowhere. And I remember, like, I was in the lab and I was looking around and I was like, I rubbed my eyes and I looked again and I was like, that's weird, and I rubbed my eyes again and I kept looking and I was like, this is really strange, because everything on my left hand side was normal, absolutely fine, but everything on my right hand side, there was 2 of everything, and it just wouldn't go. And when, like, if you get something in your eye and you think, oh, it'll go in a minute, but it just didn't go, and it just stayed. And while I was at work, I was getting on with stuff, and because it was only one side, it wasn't overly, like, it didn't disrupt me too much. So I just carried on with work, and I just thought, this is really odd. But I genuinely just thought I will probably go, like, soon at some point. But it stayed, and basically I got home that night, and I thought, yeah, I should probably go to the doctor. Now, that was kind of the big thing that kick-started all of this, but actually rewinding a little bit, so starting from sort of September, October last year, so September, October 2018, I had started to have a few weird symptoms coming up that I couldn't explain. So I kept getting like pins and needles a lot, which, I mean, when you get them at night time and you wake up and you've been laying funny, that's kind of normal, but I'd been getting it a lot, like, and I'd wake up and I'd be like laying flat, so I hadn't been laying on my arms and legs or anything, but I was still getting pins and needles, and it was really weird. And then things like when I walk like to and from the station, what I was finding was that when I stopped walking, all of a sudden, like, well, my legs would feel like they're vibrating, like they just have this sensation. Like, so if any of you, my sciencey friends, have ever used a vortex, and you know, you hold the tube on the vortex for too long, and then your fingers feel all like they're vibrating still, even once you've taken the tube off the vortex. It was like that. It was that kind of vibrating feeling. But that had been happening since like September, October. But because it was so mild, and it was only like every now and again, and it would go after like 5-10 minutes. So I'd walk somewhere, have like vibrating legs, and then it would go. And because of that, I basically just thought like, oh, I've got a trapped nerve, or I've obviously been laying funny, or, you know, it's obviously not that serious. And I kept thinking, I was like, oh, if anything, like if it gets worse, I'll go and see a doctor. And I also kept thinking like, oh, you know, if I go and see a doctor about something else at some point, then I'll mention it while I'm there. You know, it wasn't anything that I was going to go and make an appointment for, because I just didn't think it was that serious. And then, of course, so that was going on like from September, October. I'd also been having a few like issues with my temperament. So I was feeling really, really down and really, really stressed out for the whole of like the winter season. And anyone who knows me knows that Christmas is my absolute favourite time of the year. Like, I adore Christmas. I start listening to Christmas music in September. Like, I just absolutely adore it. But this Christmas just been, I was dreading it. I don't know what happened. And I remember saying to one of my best friends, like, if I could have a wand and wave a magic wand and just skip the whole of the Christmas period and just wake up on New Year's Day, that was what I wanted. I just didn't want it to come, and that is so unlike me. So I just felt really, really stressed out, really overwhelmed, and I suppose like throughout the whole period, I guess I just kept thinking like, oh, you know, I might be having a bit of an anxiety dip, because I have had throughout my life, I've had like periods of like depression and anxiety and stuff, and I did think maybe I'm just sort of like slipping down that slope again. But I didn't really think too much of it, and I just sort of thought, oh, I'll be all right again, like I'll sort myself out, it'll be fine. And then it got to sort of like, I say, like the February when my eyes went, and basically I just thought, when that happened, I was like, okay, this is probably something a bit more serious now. And when I got home that night, I quickly Googled, went online and sort of researched eye disturbances and pins and needles. And of course, one of the first things that come up are brain tumours, and then MS, and then stroke. And then a few other things, mostly cancers, and other nasty things. And of course I started to panic. And the thing is, although like they always say you shouldn't, like, you know, ask Dr. Google, because he's always going to tell you that you're dying. The thing is, I do have a research background, and when I look at things online, I know roughly where to look for the right information. So I was looking at the right places, and I had this feeling inside. I was like, I know there's something going on. This is not right. So I booked an appointment the next day, went into the doctor's on the Thursday, and basically told them what happened, told them I'd having this double vision. And the doctor I saw was doctor number 1 of 3. And she basically said, don't be ridiculous, it's going to be nothing serious, you know, it's probably just a vitamin deficiency. And then she said to me, do you get a really varied diet? Do you have lots of like cheese and protein and meat and everything else and blah, blah, blah? And I'm vegan. So straight away I was like, well, no, I'm vegan, but I do have a balanced diet. And there was something that I've always sort of prided myself on, is I've always considered myself a relatively healthy person. And I do make sure, I've always made sure that I get the right kind of nutrients, because I do appreciate being vegan and vegetarian. When you cut things out, you know, you have to make sure you're getting all of the right nutrients and stuff. But I've always been pretty good at that. So when she said to me, I said to her, I said, no, I am vegan. I said, but I do make sure I eat the right stuff. And then she was like, oh, well, you're definitely going to be vitamin deficient then. She said, we'll do a full blood test, but it's probably that. And I remember thinking like, well, I don't think so, because I do make sure that I eat the right stuff, but okay, whatever. So she organised a blood test for there and then. So I had a blood test done. And she also said to me, in the meantime, go and have your eyes checked by your optician, and that will rule that out, and then we can go from there. So that literally, straight from the doctor's surgery, I went straight into town and had my eyes checked. Of course, sod's law, I literally looked like a mess. I had no makeup on, looked awful, went straight into town, which I don't normally do without makeup on, because of course, what happens? I bump into like 4 people I know. One of them was a friend I haven't seen in years, so sod's law, I bump into him, for God's sake. Anyway, and so I had my eyes checked, and the optician said, no, there's actually nothing wrong with your eyes are completely fine. She said, whatever's going on is obviously something to do with your body, not your eyes. So I was like, okay, well, that's not overly reassuring, but fine. So then they said to me, the doctor's surgery had said to me that my blood results will be back within a week, and basically they'll contact me if they hear anything. So don't worry, it'll be the end of next week before you get anything. That was obviously the Thursday. Then the Friday afternoon, I get a phone call from the reception to say, we've had your blood test results back and you are very severely deficient in vitamin D. And she said, so we're going to start you on vitamin D medication immediately. So can you come and get your prescription? So that was, I kind of thought, well, fair enough. That kind of, that makes sense in regards to the pins and needlesy feeling, because that apparently vitamin D can cause those sorts of sensations. But then I kind of thought, well, and I know vitamin D you get from sunlight, and I don't really spend much time outside. I am a bit of a creature of comfort. I like being indoors. I don't really like the heat. I don't like being too hot. So if it is a nice, beautiful, sunny day, I will tend to stay inside where it's nice and air conditioned. And I always wear makeup with SPF in it and stuff. So I did sort of think, well, that's viable. Yeah, I probably do have a vitamin D deficiency. Fair enough. That's but I wanted to know at the time. I was thinking, but that doesn't make sense with the eye problem, because my eyes were still exactly the same. They're still all double vision. That hadn't changed. It hadn't got any better. And there was no link. I couldn't find any link between vitamin D deficiency and the eye problem. So obviously I had the weekend, started on my medication anyway, and then went back in on the Monday, and I thought I'll see a different doctor. So I saw a second doctor, and I said to him, basically, I told him what had happened, and I said to him what I was worried about. I said that I had searched it online. I said, could it be one of these particular things? And he did all these different sort of tests me. He made me touch my nose and touch his fingers and nose, and he did all these different balance and coordination tests, and then he was like, no, your balance and coordination is absolutely fine. He said it's not going to be anything serious. He said it's probably just your eyes are probably just because you're so vitamin D deficient, because I was really severely deficient. So he was telling me that the levels and a healthy level of vitamin D would be about 75 nanomoles per litre of blood and above. Anything between 50 and 75 is kind of adequate. Anything between 30 and 50 is deficient, and anything below 30 is severely deficient, and I was 16.4, so I was very, very deficient. And he basically said that because you're so deficient, he said it could just be that your body's just gone a bit haywire because of that. He said, so basically see how it goes. He said the only thing is we can't rule anything else more serious out at this point. He said, but we'll just see how it goes. So straight away I was like, great. So you're basically telling me that you can't rule out a brain tumour or MS, but but you're just going to let me see how it goes. So I wasn't overly happy about it, but I thought, well, I'll give him, benefit of the doubt. I'll see what happens. I wasn't convinced, but I just thought, well, he's a doctor and I'm not. And it probably is, what he's saying. So I left it a week. My eyesight didn't change. I still felt really poorly, just generally by this point. I think the anxiety was getting to me by this point, and I was just feeling really, really down, really not well. I hadn't been back to work, and I was just really, really all over the place. So I went back in the following Monday and saw doctor number 3, and she's actually one of our practice partners, and she was lovely. She was really, really lovely, and she actually really reassured me. She told me that she thinks basically that I have or had something called a latent squint. So basically she thinks I had a squint in my eye, like a weakness, and that basically because it wasn't noticeable, it was really mild, but because I was so vitamin deficient and not very well at the time, she thinks that the symptoms of that, or that it was starting to show itself. So she said, however, although that is what she thinks it is, she would like me to be seen by an ophthalmologist, which is an eye doctor, and she said in the meantime she wanted me to have an MRI scan, and she said not to panic or worry, because the MRI, she said, will come through really, really quickly. She said, but the reason for that is because MRIs do come through really fast, and she said, but the waiting list for the ophthalmologist is about 10 to 12 weeks. So she said, you may as well have the MRI done now. That will rule anything else out. Then you can go to your ophthalmologist and you can say, look, I've had XYZ done. It's all come back clear. This is where we are. She said, what you don't want to do is wait until the ophthalmologist, because then if they don't find anything, they will then want to do an MRI, and it just slows everything down. So I said, fine, fair enough. So I went out there feeling really, really relaxed, really reassured. she did also say to me at the time, she was like, I'm going to sign you off for another 3 weeks off work, because she said, I'm a bit worried about your sort of mental health, because at this point I was like a mess, because I was just like, oh, I don't know what's going on, and I was feeling really, really down. And she was like, I want you off for at least another 3 weeks in total, and she's going to refer me for counselling. And I went along with all that, had all that done, was going through all that. So then that was a Monday. On the Wednesday, I got a phone. Was it Wednesday or the Thursday? It was Wednesday. I got a phone call to say, we've had a cancellation. Can you come in for the MRI tomorrow? And I was like, oh, okay, really fast. So because I went in, had the MRI done. It was just on my brain at this point, just without contrast, just a standard MRI. For anyone who's ever had or worried about MRIs, they're absolutely fine. You literally just, you're like put on this bed and they strap your head in and you go into this like tunnel. And it's a little bit like, it's quite tight, so it's a bit claustrophobic-y feeling, but it's just loud. There's no, like nothing touches you. There's literally no pain or discomfort or anything. Yeah, it's really loud and you just lay there, and I just like shut my eyes and had a little bit of I tried to have a bit of a nap. But it's nothing to worry about. It's really not scary at all. So anyway, I had that done, and then they said, oh, the results will probably take about 2 to 3 weeks to come, so obviously we'll just contact you when they arrive. I said, okay, fine. And then that was on the Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday. Then the following Wednesday, they called me and said, we've had your results, can you come in? And I, again, thought, oh, that was nice and quick. But then I thought, oh, well, it's probably just one of those things. And it was quite funny because they phoned me and said, we've had your results, but it was all left on voicemail because I missed the phone call. And then by the time I found it, the doctor's surgery had closed. So I called them first thing on the Thursday morning and basically said, look, I've had this phone call, you've got my results, can I come in? And they said, unfortunately, they didn't have any appointments there. They said, but they can make an appointment for me to come in the next day. And I must admit, at the time, now my doctor's surgery, they never do that. Like if you phone up, you can't make an appointment for the next day. So the fact that they said to me, oh, but it's okay, we can make an appointment for you tomorrow, again, that should have been a red flag, but I was just like, okay. And then it was funny because I messaged one of my best friends and she said to me, I was like, oh, I've got an appointment to go in tomorrow and get my results. And she was like, oh, well, that's good, because she said if there had been anything serious, they'd have wanted you in today. And I was like, they did want me in today, but I just missed the phone call. Anyway, so I went in and that unfortunately it was the first of the 3 doctors that I saw, the one who was convinced I had a vitamin deficiency. She was the one who actually gave me my results in the end, because I just made an appointment with anyone to see my results. It didn't really matter at the time. And when I went in, I went on my own because I genuinely just thought, I was like, look, because that other doctor had made me feel so sure that it was a latent squint and that I had nothing to worry about. So when I went in, I was like, la 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 la, like my boyfriend was at home making the pizza, and I didn't take anyone with me because I was just like, oh, it's gonna be fine, I'll just grab my results, they'll be clear and it's no problem. And of course I walked in and sat down, and she was very sort of like serious looking, the doctor, and she was like, okay, she said, have you got anyone with you? I was like, no. And she was like, okay. And she was like, do you know why you're here, don't you? And I was like, yeah, to get my MRI results. And she was like, yeah. She was like, has anyone spoken to you about them yet? I was like, no. At this point thinking like, what? And then she just like turned and looked at her computer, really, really serious, and was like, I'm afraid it's not good news. And like that moment in time, I can literally pinpoint, it felt like everything had stopped. Have you ever seen Bernard's watch? You know, when he does that little watch and he stops time? That is literally how it felt when she said that. Because when she said those words, like, I'm afraid it's not good news, like that, for me, that was just like, oh my Jesus Christ, I have got a brain tumour. I'm going to die. I'm literally going to die. That is what I thought. And anyway, and then she just went and just spoke at me for like 20 minutes. I had no idea what she was saying. I wasn't listening to her. I was just like, oh my God, I am going to die. I am literally going to die. She was talking to me about that they'd found several lesions in my brain, areas of inflammation, areas of demyelination, and all sorts, scar tissue and everything else. And then basically I had no idea what we were talking about. So then when she stopped talking, I sort of looked at her really blank, and she was like, do you have any questions? And I was like, oh, can you just repeat everything you've just... No, I said to her, I was like, actually, I said, well, I don't really understand, like, what does this all mean? And she said, basically, it means that we're facing MS. So that was the point where MS was first mentioned to me officially. That said, she did then sort of backtrack a little bit, and she was like, I'm saying that. She said, of course, she said, I'm not a neurologist. So she said, you're going to need a few more scans and other tests and things to confirm it for definite. So, of course, I walk out there. She's like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I walk out there, get in my car, and I was just like, ah! Completely had a massive meltdown to my sister. But anyway, eventually, you know, sorted it out, processed it, and basically since then it's just been a case of so basically with MS they can't usually diagnose from just one MRI scan. They have to do several different scans, and they usually use contrast, so they put like a dye in you, and then they can basically, it highlights areas of the brain and the spinal cord, and basically they have something, it's called the McDonald's test. So I will just say here, pause, disclaimer, obviously this is all really new to me at the moment. Still, there's still so much that I'm learning, and there's so much that I still don't understand fully, so I'm by no means an expert. So obviously if you are in the beginning stages of being diagnosed with MS, or if you know someone with MS or anything, don't take what I'm saying as like medical knowledge by any means. Obviously go and research it properly, but from what I've read, they have something called a McDonald's test, which is basically the criteria that they use to diagnose MS. And from what I've seen, it's basically that the way they diagnose it is if you have so multiple sclerosis means multiple sclerae, which are basically areas of the lesions in your brain, which is areas of like damaged nerve tissue. And basically, if you've got multiple of them in your brain, it means that what's happened is that over time you've had multiple attacks or relapses, and basically that's left these damaged areas in your brain. And if you've got multiple different sclerae or sclerosis, and they're all different ages, so you can tell that you've had them at different times in your life, that is how they diagnose MS. There are several, from what I've read and heard, that there are quite a few different neurological conditions that can cause similar like signs and symptoms and things, which is why they have to do quite a lot of different tests and in different ways to try and actually pinpoint and diagnose MS specifically. But basically, I'll talk a bit more about exactly what MS is in a moment, but just to finish off with my sort of the diagnosis stage of it. So I then got referred to a neurologist. I then was basically, I ended up having 3 more MRI scans with contrast. So they basically, what they do is they put you in the MRI scanner, they scan you. So I had to have another one on my brain and another, so then 2 on my spinal cord. So one on my thoracic spine and one on my cervical spine. And they put you in there, they scan you, and then they bring you out, they inject you with the dye, then they whack you back in there again, and then they scan you again. And basically they then have 2 images, one with dye, one without, that they can compare. And it helps, and the dye that they use basically helps to highlight the different areas. And anyway, so I had those done, and basically they did tell me at that point that I may have to have a lumbar puncture, because again, lumbar punctures can pick up other things. So they can pick up basically different types of antibodies that will be present in your blood or your spinal fluid if you have got an autoimmune disease. The problem with lumbar punctures is they're not, from what I've read, they can give both false positives and false negatives. So they're not fail safe, and you can't just have a lumbar puncture on its own. You have to have lumbar punctures with MRIs. That said, if your MRIs are clear enough without a lumbar puncture, you don't always need to have one for diagnosis. So I had the 3 MRIs and then went to see my neurologist. And that was on the 20th of May, and he sat me down and said that yes, he can confirm that I do have MS. The MRIs themselves are clear enough to show that I do have I have multiple sclerosis. So I am still going to be having the lumbar puncture in September, because basically now, from what I was told, I didn't realise, when I read online, I thought there was only 3 different types of MS. It turns out my neurologist said that there's actually 9, so I'm assuming they're sort of like subtypes. I'm not really sure about them yet at the moment, but he basically said because there's different types, and nowadays there are so many different new types of treatment that you can have, but obviously the type of treatment that you have depends on the type of MS that you have, so they have to make sure they know exactly what type it is that you've got, and that's where the lumbar puncture comes in, because that can help. So he's going to do that with me in September, and that will help him pinpoint exactly what type I've got, so then I can get a medication to have moving forwards. In the meantime, he said basically because I did have quite severe inflammation in my brain and spinal cord, he said the first thing that we need to do before we do anything else is get the inflammation down, and he said that will help alleviate symptoms, because obviously if you imagine if your brain's really inflamed, you're going to be getting symptoms left, right and centre. He said so that by getting the inflammation down, that will help to prevent any further damage and will make you feel better. The problem with that is that in order to get the inflammation down, I had to go on a very, very high dosage of steroids for 5 days. And he told me when he gave them to me, he said the first 3 days will be quite rough. He said, but by day 4 and 5 you should be feeling much better. But he did say also that steroids affect different people in different ways. Some people can have them and feel fine, other people can feel awful. There's an obscene number of side effects that you can have. Probably a big mistake of mine was reading the pamphlet and then finding out all the different things that can happen to me. Probably shouldn't have done that. So anyway, so I took the steroids, and I will say, I mean, I'll probably do like another video account at some point, a bit more detail about the treatment and stuff, because there's so much I could say about that. But the steroid was an interesting experience. The 5 days on the steroid actually weren't too bad. I will say I have never felt so weird in my life. Weird, just so many different symptoms all the time, constantly chop changing. Like 1 minute I was here, then I was there, I was here, I was all over the place. But I didn't feel unwell overly until I stopped them. And I will say, when I stopped the steroids, I have never felt so unwell in my life. I honestly felt like I'd been poisoned and I was dying. On the plus side, I said to my boyfriend, there's nothing quite like feeling like you're dying to make you realise and appreciate how good it feels to feel healthy again. Because once I started to feel better, I was like, oh my God, I feel so good now, so good compared to how I felt a few days ago. I think coming off them, the withdrawal symptoms from the steroids were really, really nasty. But luckily I'm over that now, and I'm feeling much better. Today, actually, I'm feeling the best I have felt in a long time. I actually feel like I look more like me today. I was feeling like a 50-year-old like haggard witch a few days ago, because my skin was just awful, and I can't even explain it to you. But anyway, that's a whole other story for another time. So I finished the steroids, and basically now the idea is that they will have reduced all the inflammation in my brain and spinal cord, and that now I've got like a good 9 months to a year of like time to play with, before I have to worry about getting any other symptoms. So I've got a bit of time. I can just basically so that gives us time to wait until September to have the lumbar puncture. At that point I can then get my diagnosis of exactly which one of the 9 I've got, and then go from there with medication. So that's kind of my steps for moving forwards. Generally speaking, in myself, I feel absolutely fine now that I'm better. Like, I'm off the steroids, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling tired a lot, but again, right now, that's probably still because the steroids can take about 2 weeks to get fully recover from them. So and it's only been like 3-4 days since I've been off them, so I know that still feeling quite tired is probably still to do with that. I'm not going back to work yet until next week, which is nice, but to be honest, I'm just really looking forward to getting back to normal again. I just want to get back to work, I want to get back to normal, do all my things again, my hobbies and stuff, and yeah, I just can't wait to feel good again. So just a little bit about what MS actually is, just to sort of cover that, because I don't think I covered that base. But basically, so without going too into the depths of sort of sciencey stuff, but basically, so we've all got obviously spinal cord and your brain and spinal cord, and obviously that the way that our brain gets messages to our body is through the neurons or nerve cells, and you have basically the nerve cell is quite long, and you've got like two ends, so message goes from one end to the other. And in the middle, you've got like a long, like the pathway, like the neural pathway, and it's basically it's called a myelin sheath, and it's basically like the cord with protein around it, and protein is the myelin. And basically what happens with, so multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease. So basically it means that my body is attacking my nerve cells. So it's attacking all my neurons, and my body basically thinks that my nerve cells are bad and it wants to get rid of them for me. But unfortunately it's mistaken, very much so. My nerve cells are not bad, but it thinks they are. So what it does is it attacks the myelin sheath. So when you've got this, like, you would normally have like a nice smooth like passageway, this gets attacked and it gets damaged, which then means that either the signals from your brain and your spinal cord, they can't get to your body properly and they're disrupted, or they're completely destroyed and they can't get there at all. So for example, when my eyes just went like that and were gone, like double vision, that's because that particular pathway had obviously been damaged or disrupted to the point where it wasn't working anymore. But the beauty of our brains and our spinal cords is that because we have so many, like millions and millions and millions of neurons, that we can make compromises sometimes. So obviously now my eyesight corrected itself on its own. My eyesight's perfectly fine again now. So obviously my brain has found another pathway and it's worked out a way around it. The problem with MS is if it's left untreated and you don't get any treatment for it at all, over time, obviously your body will just keep continuing to attack your nerve cells, and that can cause more and more and more damage, and more of the myelin sheath on all of your cells will get damaged. And of course, over time, what that means basically is that you can't get messages out to parts of your body, and once the damage has been done, in a lot of cases it's irreversible, and then it gets to the point where your brain can't make any more compromises and there's nowhere else it can go. So obviously there are some people who have quite severe cases of MS where they can't walk or they have problems with their speech, because their particular neural pathways have been disrupted. Because we have obviously so many millions and millions of pathways in our brains, and because MS attacks all of it's the whole system. Your immune system is attacking all of your cells. It's so unpredictable. There is no way to know what part of you is going to be affected, what part of you, and to what degree. So, for example, some people with MS, classic, they can't walk, or they have problems walking, so they have to have a walking stick or they have to have a wheelchair. Other people, it might be their arms, it might be their speech, it might be their sight, it might be sensation. It could just be more invisible symptoms. So, one of the ones that I've been reading up on, which is quite common, is something called cog fog, or cognitive sort of fog, or problems with basically thinking, memory problems. That's something that I have definitely suffered with. My short-term memory is appalling, and sometimes I say things and I'm like, what? Like, why did I say that? Like, that's weird. I'll come up with stupid things, and and my brain just doesn't work quickly enough, which is actually really, really frustrating for someone like myself, because I've always sort of thought, I went to university and I always got good grades at school, and then now I say things and I'm like, where did that come from? Like, what? Like, it's stupid. But anyway, so cog fog is quite common. And say memory problems, there's all sorts, and it can be different. It's different for everyone, and that's kind of why, like, it's really important to get the awareness out there. So today, as I said at the beginning, is World MS Day, and the theme for this day today is My Invisible MS, is the hashtag for it. And actually I've been reading some really sad stories, and there's people out there who've got MS. For example, there was one lady who had a note left on her car window, and it said something along the lines of like, oh, so you can walk today then, can you? I'm assuming obviously she had a disabled blue badge, and she'd obviously got out of her car and walked, and someone had seen her walk with a blue badge and assumed that she was a scam, and things like that. And I think there's a lot of people who have MS who suffer on a day-to-day basis, but because they're not in a wheelchair or because they're walking, people think that they're okay, and that's where Amy Thompson, her website, But You Don't Look Ill, is absolutely brilliant to raise awareness for that, because she says that she in particular suffers from like cog fog and feeling tired and fatigued and things, and people always say to her, but you don't look ill, you look so well, and she said that's one of the hardest things, is that people will always say, like, well, you seem absolutely fine, and it's like, actually there's a lot going on that you don't know or you don't understand. So it's about raising awareness, and basically I think it's one of those situations where people could just do with being a little bit more empathetic. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the world, I mean, there's a lot of people in the world who can empathise with others, just can empathise anyway, but then there's also a lot of people in the world who unfortunately find it difficult to empathise unless they themselves have suffered from something. So basically that's it in quite a long nutshell. Just over half an hour though, so it wasn't too bad. But anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to explain all that, and basically if anyone's got any questions then ask away. I'm more than happy to answer any questions about things so far. But basically, to summarise, it's not really that bad in the sense of, I think you know, one of the key things about MS is what they're finding nowadays is obviously the sooner that you can get a diagnosis, then the sooner you can start treatment, and that means that the sooner you can prevent long-term irreversible damage, which of course is the main thing. So I'm feeling, you know, now that I processed everything, I'm feeling a lot more optimistic. I'm feeling pretty chilled about it all. My life hasn't really changed. I mean, I do feel like emotionally I'm all up with all over the place at the moment. Like one minute I'm fine, and then I'm like, oh my god, like who am I? Like, because I've always kind of thought of myself as like a relatively healthy person. Like I've never really had any serious health issues, touch wood, until now. And you know, I'm not someone who suffers from coughs and colds, and I'm always quite like robust and healthy. And to be told now that, you know, I am technically disabled, then it's kind of weird. It's kind of a really weird thing. Like I never thought like ever that I would have something like this. And it's kind of weird. Like I saw something the other day, like someone put like a little like wordy meme thing up, and it just said like, you know, with the day that you wake up and you realise that your life is never going to be the same. And it's like, you know, that I guess like Monday the 20th of May marks that quite well. You know, the day that I was told I've got MS. My life is never going to be the same ever. And it's kind of weird. It's like a little bit of an identity crisis going on, you know, like the person who I thought I was isn't necessarily the person I thought I was. You know, I always thought I was really healthy. I've always had this ongoing thing. Because the thing is, like, when I look back now, like, I've definitely got symptoms which started as early as my early teens. So, you know, there's so many symptoms that I had. Like, when I was really quite severely depressed as a teenager. And depression is one of the key symptoms of MS. And then you know, throughout my teenage years and early 20s, I had on-off problems, which at the time I didn't think anything of them. And I had, you know, I went to a doctor, I went to the hospital about certain things, and they never found out what was wrong. They always just put it down to, you know, just one of those fluke random things. And actually it turns out now that it's all connected and it's all to do with the MS. So basically it's something that I probably had my whole life, you know, and I mean, it is an autoimmune disease. It's not hereditary, so, you know, it is familiar. So if you have it in your family, you've got like a tiny percentage more chance of, like 0.03% more likely to have it or something. And I can't remember the exact statistics, but it's quite low. But it's, if you've got it in your family, you are slightly more likely to have it. But it's not like just because you've got it doesn't mean that your children are going to have it. And doesn't, you know, no one, touch wood, as far as I'm aware, in my family have had it. So I'm the first. So yeah, so I'm just, you know, going to take it as it comes. And I think moving forwards now, obviously I've got to have the lumbar puncture in September. In the meantime, I'm going to throw myself into raising awareness for MS. I'm going to look to do something, some sort of fundraising challenge at some point, so keep your eyes peeled. I've no idea what it's going to be yet, but I do like a good fundraising challenge, so I'll have a look and see what's there. I did actually see there's a Land's End to John O'Groats cycle ride. However, the problem is though, that's this July, in June and July, so that's too soon because I won't have time to prep, but maybe for next year, we'll see. But anyway, I'm gonna have a look and think, but I will be doing something at some point, and I'm gonna get involved with the groups and yeah, basically just try and speak to as many people as I can about MS, tell people about it, you know, raise awareness, and yeah, and that's that. So there we go, World MS Day today. So there you go, you now know someone who's got MS if you didn't already. And if you've got any questions, let me know. But otherwise, I hope you're all good, and speak to you soon.